Law of stations in operation. Stations are structures for progression, and they function as pathways of development everywhere except in consciousness itself, which is eternally whole and complete. Stations provide boundaries of operations and hierarchies of authorities. Various traditions teach that stations exist in spiritual and non-physical realms. For example, stations of angels and archangels are mentioned in Scripture. Revealed in humanity. A station is a well-defined space of operation that is occupied by a succession of people, operating in it and as it. A station harbors ongoing standards and preserves a body of learning that prescribes proper actions. Authority, responsibility, and duty are given by the station, and certain leeways and permissions are included with the post. The station is more powerful than an individual because it has been vested with importance over time. For example, a succession of people can hold a particular office, such as ambassador. A person can learn to operate as a steward of everything encompassed by the station, and they must relinquish the authority and permissions inherent in that post when they no longer hold the station. People are involved in stations across all domains in life. Sometimes the stations are active and evident, while other times they are less obvious. Stations are related to the domain of membership. Members of a group agree to partake in certain activities, even if those activities are not stated in writing. For example, in most schools, there are stations of membership involving cliques, lunchroom seating, and other activities that are followed but not articulated. Some stations come from everyday life, such as being an employee or a parent, while stations of being come as acknowledgement of spiritual progress. Stations of being transcend the vagaries of common life and reveal progression in consciousness. This work is not about personal self-help. It's about preparing people for the stations they are called to fulfill as conscious beings. Stations provide the opportunity for operating outside the personal self. It is improper to personally identify with a station because that post is not a final destination. Ultimately, no one owns a station. The phenomenon of stations is well established in spiritual teachings. Spirituality often teaches people to transcend the personal self so as to avoid the errors of taking the current station personally or abusing the power of the station. The book River of Being, A Parable for the Spiritual Journey, illustrates the operation of stations on the spiritual journey. Antithesis. The antithesis of the law of stations involves remaining in personal limitations, which means seeing everything through your own ego or personality. This is evident in sports when a team member puts their own agenda above the goals and results of the team. Another example is when a parent continues to treat children as minors even after the young people have moved out of the station of childhood. Disturbances are created when people try to hang on to the power imbued by a station after they have been relieved of those duties. Other errors include people hanging on to a station when they are no longer the proper person for the current context or when they are afraid to leave. Refusing to progress as prompted by time, place, and condition is in opposition to the law of stations. Application: how to be effective with stations. First, your stations. Recognize and understand both your human stations and your stations of being. Human stations concern the physical or external self, such as your job or your role in the family. Stations of being concern your progress on the spiritual journey, particularly with ethics and morals, which are standards regarding how you conduct yourself virtuously in the world. Distinguish the permissions, duties, and responsibilities conferred by these stations. Develop self-awareness and a good sense of conscience so you are informed about your calling, your competence, and your growth opportunities. Understand that stations always involve boundaries and that there are consequences to overstepping these boundaries. Acknowledge that when you move out of a station for whatever reason, you relinquish the duties and privileges of that station. Note that for some stations, failing to fulfill the required responsibilities and duties could be a criminal act. Accountability is higher for those who occupy a station than for those who do not. The stations of others. Recognize the stations of others so you know how to interact with people properly. Understand that it is impolite to convey your assessments about what those stations involve unless you have permission to do so. For example, refrain from telling someone about their station unless they agree to hear your thoughts or unless their station requires them to give you a proper listening.